What happens when the CEO of a fast-growing coffee chain goes undercover and finds one of his baristas secretly working two jobs in the same uniform? Rylan Monroe had inherited the 11-store coffee chain from his father 3 years ago. It wasn't flashy, but it was steady. His dad built it from the ground up, always saying, "Take care of your people and they'll take care of the shop." But lately, Rylan felt like something was slipping. Sales were fine, but he'd been getting vague reports: short-staffed locations, inconsistent service, low morale. He hated relying on spreadsheets and district manager summaries. Everything felt filtered, sanitized. So he made a call. He'd go undercover, really undercover. No camera crews, no TV shows. Just him, a dyed beard, cheap glasses, a fake Southern accent, and the name Toby. He'd say he was a new trainee sent from the hiring platform his company contracted. It made sense: each store hired independently through a shared system. No one in store had met him before. He picked Store 7, tucked into a strip mall in Sacramento. It ranked lowest in employee satisfaction based on the anonymous pulse surveys his HR director showed him last quarter. The store was also short 3 people, yet still somehow keeping up with one of the highest sales volumes. That didn't add up. When he walked in for his first shift, the manager barely looked at him. "Stick with Crystal," the woman said, glancing at a clipboard. "She'll show you the register." Crystal Wheeler. She was in her 20s but had a calm, older energy. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun and her uniform was spotless. She looked tired, but not the kind of tired that came from one bad night of sleep. It was the kind that sat in your shoulders, lived in your eyes. "Hey, I'm Crystal, you're Toby," she asked, friendly but efficient. "Yeah, thanks for training me," Rylan replied, adjusting his glasses. "Cool, let's knock it out then," she said, already moving toward the register. She didn't mess around. She walked him through every button, corrected him patiently when he messed up, and even covered for him when he accidentally rang up a mocha as a macchiato. "You'll get the hang of it," she said, brushing it off. "Just breathe. It's coffee, not brain surgery." Her shift didn't slow down once. Rylan kept glancing at the clock, hoping for a breather, but the line stayed long. Crystal checked orders, worked the register, steamed milk, ran mobile pickups, all without losing her footing. Not once did she complain. At one point, a customer started arguing over the price of a chai. Crystal handled it with calm professionalism and a refund, no attitude, no pushback. After the rush, Rylan was wiping down a table when he saw her glance at her phone. She frowned, tucked it away, and disappeared into the back. She came back a minute later, grabbing her bag. "Hey," she said quickly to the manager. "I'll be back in 3 hours. I'm doing the night shift again." The manager barely looked up. Yeah, try not to fall asleep this time." Rylan blinked. "Wait, you're coming back tonight." Crystal gave him a tired smile. "Yes, gotta keep moving." He followed her outside without thinking. "You doing a double today?" She paused, then shrugged. "Sort of. I got another job across town. I do nights there. I just come back here when the shift ends." Rylan stopped walking. "Wait, you work 2 jobs, both today?" She looked at him, surprised he didn't already know. "Yeah, man, been doing it for months. It's not ideal, but it is what it is." "Why though?" he asked, genuinely confused. "You're always here, you're already doing enough." Crystal hesitated. "I've got a kid. He's 9, name's Nolan. He's got a condition, needs therapy, meds, transportation, and his dad's not around. So, I just do what I gotta do to keep the lights on." Rylan didn't know what to say. For a second, he forgot he was pretending to be Toby. She smiled, like she was used to people not knowing what to say. "Anyway, I'll see you tonight, yeah." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, see you tonight." She jogged toward the bus stop, disappearing into traffic. Rylan stood there, heart pounding. This wasn't just about bad morale or short staffing. This was about people holding up the whole place on pure grit and no one noticing. He walked back inside, stomach tight. The manager looked up. "She's still doing that other job," she muttered, half laughing. "Girl's gonna burn out. I told her that." Rylan didn't answer. He just went back to wiping down the counter, already planning what he needed to see next. He was starting to realize this wasn't just about fixing a store. It was about fixing how he'd stopped seeing the people who ran it. Rylan showed up early the next morning, still in his Toby disguise. He'd barely slept. His mind kept circling Crystal's situation, how someone so capable, someone holding the store together, was being ground down while leadership either ignored it or joked about it. He needed to understand the full picture. One employee didn't tell the whole story, but she'd cracked something open. The store opened at 6. By 6:15, they were already behind. Only one person was on bar, one on register, and Crystal hadn't arrived yet. The manager from the day before strolled in at 6:25, holding a smoothie from another cafe. "Traffic," she said without looking up. The barista, a guy named Devin, kept his head down but didn't respond. He was already behind 4 drinks. Rylan stepped in to help, taking mobile orders and calling names. No one corrected his technique. No one checked his training. It was chaos but normalized, like everyone had resigned themselves to the dysfunction. At 7, Crystal walked in. She looked drained, her eyes glassy, but she moved with purpose. She tied her apron and walked straight into the line without checking in. No greeting, no instructions, just instinct. Rylan moved beside her at the bar. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She didn't look over. Didn't sleep. Nalan had a migraine last night. Couldn't leave him, so called out of my other job, first time in 2 months. "You ever think about quitting one of them?" he asked, just above a whisper. She didn't hesitate. Every morning, and every night remember the bills. Before he could respond, a loud voice cut through the noise. "This is the 3rd time this week my order's been wrong." A man at the pickup counter held up a half-full cup. He was in a suit, mid-40s, tense. "I asked for a triple shot, almond milk. This is regular milk. You think I'm just making it up?" The manager, who had been scrolling on her phone by the window, looked up and sighed audibly. "Devin," she called, "fix the drink." Devin glanced at the sticker and muttered, "It says regular milk." "I literally watched her make it wrong," the customer snapped, pointing at Crystal. She didn't even check the label. Crystal stepped forward. "I'm sorry, I'll remake it now." The customer looked her up and down. "Maybe if you got some sleep, you could read the ticket." Rylan froze. Crystal's hand tightened around the pitcher, but she kept her voice even. "I said I'll fix it." "No, you'll refund it," the man snapped. "I don't want another mistake. You people are unbelievable." Before Crystal could reply, Rylan stepped forward, heart pounding. "Sir, there's no need to speak to her like that." The man looked at him, surprised. "You work here." "Training," Rylan said, "but I know enough to say disrespect isn't part of the service." The manager finally stood up. "He's a customer, Toby. Let's not escalate." Crystal didn't say anything. She remade the drink, set it down, and walked into the back without a word. The customer took the drink and left without thanking anyone. Rylan turned to the manager. "You're just going to let him talk to her like that?" She shrugged. "She can handle it, that's the job." He stared at her, trying to keep his expression neutral. "Do you ever step in when someone's being treated like that?" "I run the store, not therapy," she said, already walking back to her seat. Rylan followed Crystal into the back. She was leaning against the sink, rubbing her eyes. "I'm fine," she said before he could speak. "Happens more than you think." It shouldn't, he said. She gave a short laugh. Welcome to retail. He didn't push. You want me to cover for you out there? She looked at him, surprised. You're not trained for bar. I'll figure it out. She didn't answer right away. Then she nodded. 2 shots per cup, almond milks in the red pitcher, wipe the wand after every use. As she stepped out to let him in, he heard her mutter, "You're weird, Toby." He didn't respond, just got to work. By 11, the line had finally slowed. The floor was sticky, the trash was overflowing, and the tip jar was still empty. Rylan stepped out back for a quick breath. Devin was already there, leaning against the wall, smoking. You actually trying? Devin asked, exhaling. Most new hires don't. Trying not to drown, Rylan said. Devin gave a half laugh. Good luck, this place eats people, you'll see. Why stay then? Devin shrugged. I got probation. Can't get another job until that's cleared, so I'm stuck, like most of us. Rylan nodded slowly. What about the manager? She always like this. Devin looked toward the door. She used to care back when she got promoted, but now she just waits out her shifts. District never checks in, so it's whatever. You ever file a complaint? Devin laughed, no humor in it. To who? They don't listen to floor staff. They listen to numbers, and we hit our targets so they think everything's fine. Rylan didn't reply. He just stared at the cracked pavement beneath his feet. Later that afternoon, during a lull, Rylan watched as Crystal sat at a back table, filling out a worksheet. There was a workbook beside her labeled Grade 3 Math Home Edition. He walked over. Helping your son. Trying, he's homesick today. Staying with my sister. Looks like a lot. She nodded. School wants everything submitted online now, but we don't have a laptop, so I do the worksheets and take pictures to upload from the library. He picked up the edge of the workbook. You do this every day. She kept her eyes on the paper. If I don't, he falls behind, and if he falls behind, they cut his therapy sessions. It's all connected. He sat down across from her. What would help most right now? She paused. Honestly, a manager who gave a damn, more staff, and 1 night off a week, just one. Rylan swallowed hard. You ever think about quitting both jobs and starting fresh somewhere else? She met his eyes. People like me don't get fresh starts, we get survival. That night, after the store closed, Rylan stayed behind under the pretense of mopping. The manager had left early, citing a headache. Devin clocked out without a word. Crystal stayed, finishing inventory. As she counted cartons of oat milk, Rylan finally spoke. You deserve better than this. She didn't look up, so do a lot of people. Yeah, he said quietly, but you especially. She gave a tired laugh. What, you gonna fix it, Toby? He didn't answer. Not yet. He watched her finish the count, write the numbers down, and lock the fridge. Then he stepped outside, pulled out his phone, and called his executive assistant. Tomorrow morning, he said, I want HR, legal, and ops on a video call. No delays. Because now he'd seen it with his own eyes. And it was time to start fixing what he'd let rot. By dawn the next day, Rylan had already shed the disguise. No more fake beard, no more glasses. He put on a simple button-up and jeans, something approachable, but unmistakably not a barista uniform. At exactly 7, he walked through the door of store 7, just as the morning rush started to build. Devin glanced up from the espresso machine, confused. The manager, who was leaning against the counter with a half-eaten muffin, blinked at him, trying to place him. Can I help you? She asked flatly. I'm Rylan Monroe, he said, keeping his tone clear but calm. I own this company. The entire store seemed to freeze for a moment. The manager's expression changed instantly. She straightened up, tossed the muffin into the trash, and stammered, I didn't realize you were coming." "I know," he replied. "That was the point." Crystal, who had just walked in and was setting her bag down, looked at him like she was seeing someone she only vaguely recognized. She didn't say anything yet, but she didn't look away. Rylan took a slow breath and turned to the staff. "I've spent the last few days working here, undercover, training, observing, listening, and I saw some of it good, some of it deeply concerning." The manager shifted on her feet. "I think if I'd known." "You would have acted differently," he interrupted, "which is exactly why I didn't tell anyone." He turned to Devin. "I saw you keep this place running with barely enough help. You've been doing double the work with half the support." Devin nodded once, eyes guarded. "And Crystal," Rylan said, facing her fully now, "you've carried this store, quietly, consistently, without complaint. You've taken on responsibility no one asked you to, and no one acknowledged." Crystal crossed her arms, voice steady. "So what happens now?" "I'm not here to make speeches," Rylan said. "I'm here to take responsibility, and to make changes starting now." He turned to the manager. "You've repeatedly left your team unsupported. You've allowed disrespectful behavior from customers to go unchecked, and you've failed to address chronic understaffing. I read your shift reports. Almost all of them were copy-pasted. You haven't submitted a single performance check in this quarter." She opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. "This isn't a conversation. You're being relieved of your role effective immediately. HR will follow up with your severance and final paperwork." Her face drained of color. "Wait, this is how you handle this?" "No," he said. "This is how I handle ongoing negligence when it's confirmed by first-hand observation. You had opportunities to course correct. You didn't." She grabbed her phone and left without another word. Rylan turned back to the staff. "I know this is sudden, but I won't ask anyone to keep working under someone who made things worse instead of better." He looked at Crystal. "Can we talk in the back?" She followed him into the storage room. The noise of the cafe faded behind them. He pulled a folding chair from the corner and sat down across from her. "Why me?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Because you've done more than anyone here to hold this place together. I should have seen it sooner. I didn't. That's on me." She looked away. "I'm not looking for sympathy." "You're not getting it," he said gently. "You're getting an offer." She looked back wary. "I want you to be interim store lead," he said. "Not because you're perfect, but because you care, and that's been missing at the top." Her brow furrowed. "I'm not a manager." "You're already doing the job. You've trained new hires, managed rushes, handled inventory, and kept morale from collapsing. You just haven't been paid for it." She exhaled. "What happens if I say no?" "Then I'll respect that. But I've already spoken to HR. Will adjust your pay starting immediately, and I'll personally assign you a regional mentor. You won't be alone." She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice cracked just slightly. "I'll try, but I'm not asking anyone to go easy on me." "You don't need anyone to," Rylan said. They stepped back onto the floor together. The team glanced up, uncertain. Rylan cleared his throat. "Everyone Crystal's stepping in as interim store lead. She's earned it. Until we backfill the role permanently, she's in charge." No one objected. Devin set down a cup he was rinsing and gave Crystal a brief nod. One of the newer baristas smiled quietly. "Also," Rylan continued, "I've authorized overtime caps to be lifted temporarily until we're fully staffed again. Recruiting starts today. I'll cover bonuses for anyone who helps us bring in referrals." Crystal turned to him. "You're serious about fixing this?" He nodded. "I won't disappear after today." He stayed the rest of the shift not watching, but working. No clipboard, no office, just him side by side with the team. He fielded mobile orders, refilled syrups, took out trash. Around 2:30, a woman in her late 20s walked through the door, holding an application and looking nervous. Crystal stepped forward to greet her. "You here for the open position?" The woman nodded. "My cousin said you're hiring, said it's a tough store but a good team." Crystal handed her a pen. "That's about right." Rylan watched the moment unfold quietly. No fanfare, just a small shift in momentum. Later, as the floor calmed, Crystal approached him near the register. "I told Nolan you were the boss. He asked if you wore a cape." Rylan laughed. "Tell him I'm more of a mop and apron guy." She smiled faintly. "He also asked if I was going to be home more." Rylan's tone softened. "That's the goal, we'll get you there." He didn't make promises he couldn't keep, but he meant every word. Before he left, he pulled Devin aside. "You ever thought about shift leadership training?" Devin blinked. "Didn't think I'd qualify." "Everyone starts somewhere." Devin nodded slowly. "Let me think about it." "Take your time," Rylan said, "but know it's on the table." He stood outside the store for a long moment before getting into his car. It was just one location, one team, but it was the beginning of something overdue. He had walked in looking for answers. He walked out knowing what accountability really looked like. 3 weeks passed. Store 7 didn't become perfect overnight, but something important had shifted. Rylan kept his word. He returned twice a week, unannounced, never staying long, just enough to check in, help where needed, and make sure promises were moving into practice. He didn't bring an entourage or send memos. He listened. He watched. Crystal stood at the center of the change. The first week, she barely spoke during the team huddles. She stuck to updates and task lists. But by the second week, she started asking for input, not just from senior baristas, but from everyone. She posted a dry erase board behind the bar titled, "What's Not Working?" and made a point of checking it every closing shift. Rylan noticed something else too. She stopped looking over her shoulder. One afternoon, he arrived during a lull and stepped into the back. Crystal was reviewing the new scheduling software on a beat-up tablet, lips pressed into a tight line. "Need help?" he asked. She glanced up. "I'm trying to balance 6 people across 9 shifts. 2 are in school, one's got a second job, one just got approved for surgery leave. We're still short." He leaned against the shelf. "You want me to pull someone from another store temporarily?" "No," she said after a beat. "I don't want to patch it. I want to fix it long term." He nodded. "All right, let's talk solutions." She tapped the screen. "I flagged 2 applicants from last week. One's a vet student. Said she can do early shifts and weekends. The other's a high school senior with good references." "You trust your read on them?" "I trust what I've seen. I did both interviews myself." "Then make the offer," he said. "Don't wait on me." She raised an eyebrow, just like that. "You're the one building the team," he said. "You should have the authority to shape it." She turned back to the tablet, already typing. "I'll send the contracts tonight." Rylan watched her for another moment. No hesitation, no second guessing, just quiet control. Later that day, he sat down across from Devin during his 30-minute break. Devin had picked up extra shifts since the manager's departure, and the difference was showing. He didn't just move faster, he moved with purpose. Still rough around the edges, but steadier. "You been thinking about the leadership training?" Rylan asked. Devin shrugged. "I mean, yes, but I don't know if I'm that guy." "Leadership's not about being the loudest voice," Rylan said. "It's about knowing when to step forward and when to make space. I've seen you do both." Devin looked away, thoughtful. "I just don't want to mess it up. This is the first job I've had where someone's actually said I was good at something." Rylan tapped the edge of the table. Then let's build on that, not rush it. I'll have our training lead schedule you for the next regional shift leader course. Starts in 2 weeks. You'll shadow Crystal in the meantime. Devin nodded slowly. All right, I'll give it a shot. That evening, Crystal stayed late to train the new hire, a 17-year-old named Liana who was shadowing register. She was nervous, but curious, constantly asking small, technical questions. Crystal never brushed her off. What happens if someone asks for a drink that's not on the menu? You ask what they want it to taste like, Crystal said. Then you figure out how to make it happen. Liana scribbled that down in her notebook. Rylan watched from across the cafe, unnoticed, and smiled to himself. But not everything had smoothed out. One Tuesday morning, Rylan received a flagged report from the internal hotline. A customer had filed a complaint about a barista at Store 7, mocking their accent and being dismissive when asked to repeat a drink order. Rylan was in his car within the hour. When he arrived, he called Crystal outside. I need to talk to you about something serious, he said. Her expression shifted. What happened? Rylan explained the report. The customer gave a full description of the employee. It was Janelle. Crystal closed her eyes for a second. That's not the first time she's had attitude with people. I've talked to her twice already. Last week, she rolled her eyes at a deaf customer trying to point to the menu. Why wasn't that flagged to HR? I was trying to give her time, Crystal said. She said she was dealing with stuff at home. I didn't want to make it worse. Rylan nodded slowly. But disrespect, especially of that kind, can't be a maybe. I know, she said quietly. He stepped back inside and asked Janelle to join him in the back. She strolled in, arms crossed. You mocking someone's accent? Rylan asked directly. She scoffed. It wasn't like that. They were mumbling. I couldn't hear them. Did you ask for clarification respectfully? I said what a few times. That's not what I asked. She looked away. Listen, Rylan said, firm now. We've had 2 separate reports about you treating people like they're beneath you. One of them involved a customer with a disability. That's a line. You've been warned. Crystal documented those talks. This isn't a pattern we can ignore. So what? I'm fired, she said, voice rising. Yes, Rylan said. Effective immediately. We don't tolerate discrimination. Not here, not ever. She stood there, stunned, then stormed out without another word. Crystal stepped into the back a minute later. She's gone. She is. I hate that it came to that. You gave her chances, Rylan said. That matters, but boundaries matter too. That Friday, Rylan returned one last time before stepping back into his usual role. He arrived just after opening. The team was already mid-shift, working in rhythm. Liana was on register, confidently handling a rush of teenagers ordering iced oat lattes. Devin was managing mobile pickup and calling drinks with clarity. Crystal was on bar, moving with the kind of focus that didn't need to be loud to be respected. Rylan waited until the shift slowed, then called everyone together. I won't be around as much going forward, he said. Not because I'm disappearing, but because this team doesn't need a babysitter. It needs space to grow, and it's doing that. He turned to Crystal. You've led through chaos. You've earned more than a title. He handed her an envelope. She opened it, eyebrows tightening as she read. It was an official promotion to store manager with full benefits, a pay increase, and a note about a mentorship program she'd now help develop for other leads. She looked up. You serious? Completely. She folded the letter neatly and tucked it into her apron. I guess I'll need to buy a new binder. Rylan smiled. We'll cover it. He turned to the team. There's more. We're launching a wellness stipend company-wide. It's modest $50 a month, but you can use it on anything that keeps you healthy. Gym, therapy, childcare, even internet for schoolwork. Liana raised her hand. Wait, even snacks. If that's what helps you show up ready, yes. There was a beat of laughter, but it didn't undermine the moment it added to it. After the team returned to their stations, Crystal walked Rylan to the door. "I'm not good at speeches," she said. "You don't need to be," he replied. "You're good at people, that's harder." She nodded once. "Nolan asked if I could come to his school play next month. I said yes." Rylan paused. "You should have always been able to say yes." "I know," she said, "but now, can." He stepped outside, the door closing softly behind him. The sun was just rising over the strip mall, casting long shadows across the parking lot. It wasn't a finish line. It was the start of leading the way he should have from the beginning. By seeing the people who kept his business alive and making sure they knew it.